And we are just back from the break. Thank you very much for sticking around for the Papa Tango Sierra Delta podcast. I'd like to introduce the guest for today, Kristen Jauregui, who is out of California. Did I butcher your last name, Kristen?
No, you got it. You got it right on. Perfect.
Wicked. Awesome. Kristen, so I guess we'll start with just tell us about you. Tell us about your background. Give us the goods.
Okay. Well, I guess I could say that I always have been in law enforcement. I grew up that way, and the list is kind of long. But my grandfather, two of my uncles, my dad, my brother, now myself, my husband, and my brother. Did I say my brother already? Probably. Oh, and now my cousin are all in law enforcement. So I kind of grew up with it that way, and unintentionally, I got a job as a dispatcher and met my husband there. And since then, my uncle and cousin and brother have joined too. And so, yeah, it just has always been a part of my life one way or the other.
Okay. Well, hold on. You just said I unintentionally got a job as a dispatcher. You have to tell me about this.
Yeah. So the funny thing is so I used to work as like a grocer or like a bagging clerk at one of our grocery stores. And I was happy with life, just being like a college kid, freshly out. And my dad gave me a resume and he's like, you want to make some more money and do something meaningful? And I'm like, all right, I guess so. What do I have to do? He's like, just answer some phones. I'm like, okay. So without doing any research or knowing what I was getting myself into, I put in for it. And obviously I got the position, and years down the road, he had told me that he had he thought I had no way of actually making it in. He just thought he'd give me some experience and some drive. And so here I am 23 years later, still doing the same thing. So it wasn't my like career choice for my life when I started it, but obviously I'm not going anywhere now. I'm too far in.
Too far in. I think I find it quite easy to say that being a dispatcher is not just answering calls, answering the phone.
So far from it.
Tell us about how it is down there with you and your dispatching duties.
So for us, we're a relatively smaller agency. I think there's maybe around 15 to 16 dispatchers, including our supervisors. And for us, our city's 10 square miles, but we're heavily overpopulated. So we're really a busy city, and we're in between two freeways, one of which comes directly from LA. So a lot of stuff comes into our town. And yeah, so during day shift, there's usually 2 of us working. When swings pops on, there's 3, and then we go back down to 2 around midnight. So we don't do medical. We contract with our county fire department. And to be honest, I think we're too busy to add that on to our list of duties if we were to take that on. So it's just the 2 of us. So we kind of go back and forth if we work really good with each other, doing phones and radio at the same time, or picking up for somebody else if they're, tied up with a call, or, tied up with radio duties or running people and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of multitasking going on. But yeah, it's a good job. There's just, like you said, it's not just answering phones. Our minds are incredible, and we visualize everything that's going on, so for anybody in law enforcement or outside of law enforcement that want to know what we're doing, I don't know how it is in Canada, but they can do sit-alongs in our dispatch centers and kind of like get a feel for what we do. Most cops completely hate sitting in dispatch because it would drive them absolutely up the wall doing what we do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, the best way I could describe it is like if you were to read a horror book, and as soon as like something scary is supposed to happen, they like rip out the ending, or maybe you find out like, oh, the bad guy came in the room and he's about to do something and the story gets ripped out, or they pull the plug from the TV and then you plug it back in and it's something completely different. And then, we don't always get the closure. We hear a lot of the crime actually in progress going on, but we don't always get to know what happened at the end.
Like that to me is horrifying. Mm-hmm. The fact that just not ever knowing what's happening, being on the phone, and there's no doubt you've heard screams, you've heard horrible things happen on the phone, and just trying to maintain the composure that's needed from your job.
Yeah.
As basically the line to the person at that point until police arrive. I mean, that I find that very difficult to wrap my mind around, and you're 23 years into this.
Yeah, I mean, those calls are always hard. The suicidal calls and the murder calls or the dead baby calls. Those ones always kind of stick with you, and you don't really get over it. And yeah, I think sometimes some of our officers forget, but we stay on the phone with them the entire time until they get there for those type of in progress calls. And we're trying to convince whoever it is to stay on the phone with us, to give us whatever information, to keep updating, the officers or prevent the person from doing whatever it is they want to do to themselves.
And your husband is a police officer, you said. So have you ever been working while he is and had to dispatch calls to him? Any incidents that you were terrified for your husband? Not just, obviously, you're terrified for every police officer, but it does become a different thing when it's your husband.
Yeah, no, it does. The good thing is that I kind of grew up in law enforcement, so I understand the demands and what can happen, right? I mean, we all do to some extent. It's a different thing when you're actually experiencing it. So I am proud to say I think that I've done a pretty good job with keeping my wife hat tucked away while I'm working and just keep my dispatch hat on. And I've had one instance I've been on the phone and heard the shots going while I can't really get too much into detail because it's still in court. But while I put in a call about an active shooter, and he wasn't actually supposed to be in the field, so there was some type of calm, just knowing he wasn't the one going. But it's hard to explain, but it's still an elevated stress because it's still my guys that are going.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But then I just hear him on the radio all of a sudden yelling oh, he's still on the gun. He's still on the gun. And then you just hear a bunch of rapid gunfire, and you don't know what's going on. And it's that silence after that, really makes your heart sink into your stomach. So that was one time. There's been a few, and pretty close together. One time I got a call from a few people saying your husband's okay, and not from him. And I was at home. So that time it was just the wife hat that was on, not knowing. And that, I think I'd rather be at work when things like that happen, because then I know the details and the facts, and I'm updated in real life instead of or lifetime, I guess. Sorry. Instead of having to wait for a phone call or a text. Yeah. Which a lot of wives, obviously have to go through. And a car had rammed into the back of him, intentionally trying to kill him because that guy was upset about some officer at a completely different agency, and just happened to see my husband's unit and wanted to ram into the back of it. So, and then another time during COVID, we're having a wedding at my house for his brother, and I get the phone call, "Hey, I'm okay, but I was just involved in a shooting and I'm not going to make it." And then shit. So it's just one of those things as just in, law enforcement families, things happen at the drop of the hat, and you have to pivot, and, you can't get upset at things. No, they didn't know what's happening, and you just have to keep moving and, reschedule or just continue on with whatever plans you have. And then the most recent one was when we lost our two officers June 14th of last year. And I was on the radio for that. And he ended up going. The good thing about that day was that there was so many officers in my city because we had a big department training, which luckily they were only a few blocks away. He was one of them that was included. So he went out to that one. After pretty much everything was finalized, he made it out because he thought they might need the Bearcat to stop the shooter because it's still an active situation when he had heard it. And then my fear after that, because I didn't go back to work for 5 weeks, I got 2 weeks off from the department, which was amazing. And then just as the world works or God works, I had already planned like a 3-week vacation. So it gave me a lot of time to think and kind of decompress. So within that first week or second week back, I mean, I was always afraid of if I'd be able to dispatch again or hold it together again. And we had an active shooter at a city just north of us with an officer down. And I guess I just kept with my normal routine and called my husband because he was working that day too, and told him, hey, go get the Bearcat. There's an officer down. And none of our guys hesitated. I think even more, it was like, no, we're going to go help save this one and see what we can do. And so he got there with the Bearcat, and on the radio, it was being put out that they were still taking rounds. So that kind of, if I'm being honest, broke me down in the dispatch center. Like, I didn't lose it, but I definitely had tears coming down because I didn't want to go through it again. But he was okay. He loaded up the officer and the Bearcat, and they took off, and they didn't take any rounds at that time. So it's been heavy the last few years.
Wow. Yeah, it has been heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, how are you doing with it all? I mean, does your department do much in terms of mental health services support?
So again, as the world and God would work, our last chief that we had, he was really, really supportive of our peer support team. And so, I had some training through the FBI and I'm a certified like resiliency wellness teacher, with another civilian at my department. And so we've been trying to push for it for years. The chief before him was completely anti peer support. He was like, oh, we have something called the EPA down here, just Emergency Protective Agency. And you're not always guaranteed a clinician that understands first responders. And so long story short, I had told our last chief that was supportive about it that, you know, my brother had talked to him and he had been in a shooting, and they compared his trauma to that of a UPS worker. So it's like, you can't always rely on those types of clinicians. You need to vet your clinicians and throughout all my classes I've taught, a lot of the guys have gone to clinicians and they end up consoling the clinicians because the clinicians are not prepared to hear what we and you guys obviously really see and what we hear and what we go through.
Absolutely.
And understand the culture and the walls we have up already and the hesitancy because we could get, your guns taken away or we could be put off on leave, that kind of thing. And they don't understand that. So, long story short, Ben, he was really supportive of it. And once he became chief, he told me and my partner to go through with it and to start a peer support team. And so he got the ball rolling. And that was exactly 2 months or just shy of 2 months before our guys got taken from us. And so it's been developing. And at that point, when our 2 guys got taken from us, I think our agency really understood what peer support was, because we have what's called like a regional peer support. So our county will take care of any losses in our jurisdiction. So they showed up within a few hours. And I mean, we had canopy tents set up. We were fed breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We had different agencies taking care of patrol services and everything else, because I think we didn't work for like a week. They really gave us a lot of time to just kind of grieve and kind of process everything that went on. So moving forward, we're trying. It's still in the beginning stages. There's only 4 of us that are certified. So it's a very slow process, but they do continue putting things out. We got an app now that's through our city that everybody's been told about to download. And I know that there have been some people that have been going and getting therapy since our incident, me included. So it's getting there, but that's takes a while.
Fantastic. No, it does.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. The peer support, have a lot of people been reaching out, or members afraid to use it? I know, like, a personal thing for me is just always the fear of keeping things within the force because, like you said earlier, you get scared of it being on your record or what's going to happen. Are they going to come and say, I can't work, I can't do this anymore? Are they going to take, my service pistol? How are people down there? Are they feeling comfortable to reach out for peer support?
You're always going to have, I think, some of those that have their walls up. I know that some of those quote unquote tough guys went to our critical incident classes, I guess you could say, with our debriefings with the clinicians once that had happened. We even had the wives go and stuff like that too. So within a few months after that, I've had quite a few reach out to me about themselves, about their spouses, even about their kids. So, I think that was like a huge, unfortunately, sometimes it takes a huge incident for people to open up their eyes. And so people have been utilizing it. I'm sure there's still some hesitancy with it. We always want to act like we're okay, and we don't want to have anyone think that we're weak or we can't handle the job or anything like that. But I know at least the 4 of us that are certified, we keep in touch pretty good. And we're very open with people about how we're feeling and what we're going through and how we're processing things. And I'm pretty much an open book. So if somebody asks me, and if a day I'm feeling crappy, I'll tell you I'm feeling crappy. Or if I get a certain call, then I'll tell you, yeah, that one messed me up. And I went right back to June, so
Absolutely.
We're getting there.
Absolutely. And I'm very happy to hear that you have been working through it, because I'm not going to put any words in your mouth. However, you have been through traumatic scenarios. You have been through traumatic situations. You've experienced it, and that leaves scars. Whether they're small, whether they're big, it leaves scars and it stays there. And now you go on this peer support, coincidentally 2 months before you're about to face your biggest challenge yet. Mm-hmm. And you get some time to relax, think things through, and you come back and face another traumatic event in short order. Mm-hmm. How is it that you are managing to continue on? Because really, Kristen, it's an amazing story. You are an amazing person. And I'm sure I know you're the kind of person who's not giving yourself any of that credit. You're just, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what a cop's family does. But the reality is you are. And you've got a fortitude and a strength that is enviable. And what would you share with people who I'm struggling? What would you share with people who are struggling to find their way back?
Well, thank you. But, I don't know. I'm still struggling and trying to get it back too. And I think I just take it day by day. And some days it's like hour by hour. And I hit low days, a couple of times through the week, if I'm being honest. There's just, certain triggers, especially being at work, sitting in the same position that I sat, when that things happen. And I'm a creature of habit, but I'm very slow moving. So before everything had happened, I think, not to brag, but I think I had my ish together. Like I do gratitude. So I'll say in the morning what I'm grateful for, go to sleep saying what I'm grateful for. I was journaling. I was doing daily devotion. I was just happy. I was just happy all the time. And I was more healthy. I was eating good. I never drank. It was very minimal. And I would exercise here and there. 2020 slowed it down a little bit, but I used to be in really good shape. And after that happened, everything stopped, basically. I stopped doing everything. And so I'm just barely getting back to all of that. We even stopped the podcast for a while because we just couldn't function or talk about it or anything. So I think it's just giving yourself grace and just knowing that every day, try to do something positive moving forward. And so, I was drinking pretty, not heavily, I would say, but drinking a lot more than I would, or before I would go to bed if I had a stressful day. So I've changed that up, and I'm going to sound like completely old lady here, but I drink tea now all the time, and it's like a lavender chamomile, and it's for bedtime, and it helps you like just relax and put you to sleep. And so it's just getting my habits back. So starting my devotions again, and starting to do my gratitudes again, and starting to pray again. And I'm getting to that healthy eating again, and eventually I'll get to exercising better. So I think it's just taking slow baby steps, because when everything crashes down around you, it's hard to go back to normal.
Yeah. Well, you've said a lot there in terms of things that can be done. No, I think that's the reality. And so I've been off since the beginning of December, and I've got into healthier eating. I've cut back on my alcohol intake. I've not cut it out. I'm not going to lie. I'm still having enough, but I've cut back, and I've started exercising again, because likewise, I put on a load of weight, especially during COVID. And that's when I started going downhill mentally as well. COVID wasn't the factor in that. However, it just coincided. And so I agree with you 100%. I find working out again, I mean, most mornings I get up and I feel sad. I don't know why. I just feel sad. And even though I may not want to work out, I'll get on the Peloton, the bike here behind me. I'll do some yoga, which I've gotten into since, and it helps a little bit. I'm not going to say I walk away and I'm ready to dance on clouds, but I do feel better. I don't feel at least as sad anymore. I feel like I've accomplished something, which is a huge deal to me. So I agree with you. I think what you're doing is fantastic, and I think a lot of people can learn from that. With 23 years in, and I mean, we've already talked about this, but I just sort of want to talk about it more directly. Yeah. There's a lot of people who, look, I think it's first responders and military struggle with PTSD. It's known. Yes. Firefighters, paramedics, police, Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, whatever, they struggle. But there's a lot of sectors as well that people forget about. And I believe dispatchers are one of those sectors. I mean, is that something you can add to that? What is it that people need to realize or need to sort of conceive with regards to what your job entails, what it is that you need to do, how it is that can impact you? I mean, I know you've alluded to it already, Kristen, with talking about some of those calls, but it's not just those calls. It's 23 years of a lot of calls. Yeah. So what can you say about that? Yeah, I mean, like anything, it weighs on you, right? Like I just told you guys like a bunch of stuff that compiled over the last 3 years, and that's pretty heavy. So one of the best ways that one of my my co-teachers puts it is like, if you have a bucket and you're holding that over your head the whole time and you never talk about it, you just keep taking it on, right? So you have this bucket. Initially, when you first start off, we're all bright-tailed, bushy-eyed, and ready to go take on the world and all the bad guys. And little by little, we keep adding weight to that bucket. We put in our first dead baby call. We put in our first murder. We put in our suicide. We put in somebody we weren't able to help and they ended up getting killed or murdered or passing away. And it just keeps compiling like that over time. And so if you were to hold that bucket over your head, eventually it gets heavy. Your shoulders get tired and you can't carry that anymore. So you have to do something. You have to take that weight out. It'll still be with you, but you could just put the bucket down or start taking things out, like expressing what's going on and how it affected you and things like that. And it's just something that it sits with you. And we deal with so much stuff that the normal civilization doesn't deal with. I always, when I try to talk about it with people, I always kind of crack up at the news because before they put something out, oh, this could be disturbing. You might want to change the channel. Oh, I'm sorry, you poor things. Yes, it is disturbing and it can upset you, but you're seeing a clip of it from the media. You're not seeing it up close.
You're not hearing the screams. You're not seeing the family being completely devastated in the moment when it happens or when you tell them about something like that. You don't see any of that. The news doesn't see any of that. They get a warning. And you know, from one traumatic event, like we always have officer involved shootings, right? Like the family is so upset and or disgruntled or traumatized, and in every means they should. And more people give them grace about seeing and going through what they go through than what the officers go through. And we go through that more than 10 times over. And so, yeah, we carry that trauma with you. And sometimes we grow a thick skin because we see so much of that so often, or we hear it so often. And people don't understand that that's like our protective barrier, because if we really got upset over every call, we couldn't do our job. So sorry, I went a little off there.
No, you did not. I thought it was absolutely fantastic, because it's a side that we rarely talk about. And I love the fact that you say that warning, because I put that warning even before my podcast, just because my concern of someone coming on and losing their mind, because it's like, I just tuned in and I heard this guy talking to this lady, and she was talking about her first dead baby call and officer shootings, and it's
yeah.
But that becomes our world that we live in. I think that's a problem as well, and that's what eventually wears us down and makes us hypervigilant. Is because you know what's out there, you know what lurks around those corners.
Yeah.
And it changes how you see things.
Definitely.
Tell us, just step away a little bit from this and we'll get back to it, but tell us about the 911 Strong podcast. Give us the background on that, which is, I mean, it's really cool. It's quite big. And also, Kristen, tell us about, you've been on some pretty big podcasts and done some pretty decent talks and stuff. So give us the background on that.
Yeah. So the podcast thing was just so random how it happened. So I work with one of our best friends, or pretty much a family member, Aram Cho, and he works with me and my husband. And we happen to work on the same team for quite some time. And so we would always like carpool to and from work just to save on gas and just to be able to, you know, vent and talk about work and life and all the things. And Aram is just the biggest entrepreneur I know, and just ideas pop into his head like crazy, and he gets so driven. So it was his idea. He's like, this is great. Our conversations are funny. We're having fun. It's real, and it shows the human side of things. Like, let's start a podcast. And I'm like, okay, let's start a podcast there. I'm sure we'll see what happens. And I think we're on our 3rd or 4th year, and we're doing pretty good. We've, you know, gotten some sponsors and stuff, and some exposure and everything. And yeah, just here and there, other podcasts like yours have popped up, and I'm more than happy to do them and just kind of branch out and see what it's like. And, but yeah, our podcast is basically, like I said, showing the human side of things. And Aram is now a new lieutenant. He has a stay-at-home wife who homeschools 4 children. Me and her are really great friends, which doesn't always work with work wives, I guess, because the dynamic's a little bit different, but we get along just fine. We go camping always together. Like, we're basically kind of like a huge family unit. And then again, my side works because I'm, you know, a wife of an officer. I'm a dispatcher, and I grew up as a child with my dad being a police officer. So I kind of brought in that different side of things too. And so it just kind of works. And I give Aram a hard time whenever I can.
That's the good part, right?
Yeah.
I sent a message out to Aram as well when I saw that he had got promoted. Good for him. I'm happy for him.
Yeah.
You've done some pretty big talks though, and been on some fairly big podcasts. I mean, tell us about those.
Yeah. It just kind of works out how some of them kind of find me and some of them don't. And, one of my favorite ones have been with my friend Christina. Hers is called Decide It's Your Turn. And we developed a good friendship over the years, and she ended up doing a podcast. So I hopped on hers, and now I hopped on yours. So it's just really cool to be able to connect. Like this is the part of social media I love, is that you can meet people everywhere. Like she's in Arkansas and you're all the way up in Canada. Like, you know, way back when this would never have been possible or even thought of, you know, so it's really neat. And it's nice to branch out and talk to different groups, I guess you could say, not just law enforcement related. So it's been really good. I've been on the Proud P Wife, her podcast too. So that was really cool. So it's been really neat. And she's all the way on the East Coast.
Boom. There you go. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you're right. No, this would never have happened before. Not a chance.
No.
How would I even find you in a phone book? It wouldn't happen.
Oh my gosh. Most people don't even know what a phone book is anymore. Yeah. So it's neat, the doors that have opened because of social media. So, not to toot my horn, but I just got told to do a talk for, women leaders in law enforcement too. And that's
awesome.
Coming up at the end of this month. And that's for LA County, which is just mind boggling to me that I'm their speaker. So I've never done that before. It's different when I'm having a conversation on a podcast, but now it's just me. So it'll be interesting. And then I'm going to do a peer support class. Yeah.
I'm pretty confident you're going to just nail it out of the park, Kristen. There's no doubt about that.
I hope so.
Oh my God. Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, I don't want to take up too much of your time. So
not at all.
I just want to make sure that we get across the biggest thing. I mean, like for the point of my podcast is to let people who are struggling in silence at least have something to listen to, at least have something to take away from it. And those dispatchers out there, and I believe a lot of them will hear your word, and the fact that there's been a voice put to it, and that feelings that they struggle with even speaking of or putting words to, the fact that you can do that is going to go a long way. So I guess just before ending off, is there anything that you would like to, share with dispatchers that have been up here for 20 years, or, people who are thinking about going into that line of work, what they should consider or what they should do to make sure that they take care of their mental health? Because ultimately that's huge. It's a very, very big deal, and we struggle with it. It's very odd how there are a lot of things we're not afraid to talk about when it comes to physical issues, be it diseases or injuries. But when it comes mental, nobody really wants to say anything. It comes off as an embarrassment or as infectious. So again, if you could just speak to, dispatchers, worldwide dispatchers, in your country and mine. I hear those puppies.
Sorry.
No, it's good. If you could just kind of tell them what they should be expecting, what they should do to take care of themselves, what they should do, from the outset.
I will say for the ones that have already been in dispatch for any amount of time, because it doesn't matter how long you've been in it, you can get your first traumatic call the first day, that your feelings are valid, and it's not normal what we do. It's not normal what we hear, which is why there's such a high turnover rate, because not everybody can do or put up with what we're doing. And go seek out some help. It's not as scary as it seems. You don't lay on a couch and, talk to some weird person holding a notepad. It wasn't like that for me. I've been a few times. I've tried the EMDR. It worked, but I don't feel it worked enough for me. So I'm going back to just regular therapy with a clinician who's familiar. If you need help locating a clinician, I'll be more than happy to help you find one. I have a few connections. As far as those, that are thinking about doing the job, I mean, thankfully there's a lot of exposure out there, for dispatchers. So you could see some of I wouldn't say they're dead on, but like the 911 shows, not the fictional ones, the more realistic ones, to look at. Go do a sit along, and then just know, like, it's going to change your perspective on the world. You're really going to see the ugliness that is part of being a human. And it can be really disgusting and, really make you think differently about who you talk to and who you see, and make you hypervigilant or, make you really angry with the world. Not everybody's angry or ugly out there. There's a lot of good. And then you're going to have to realize that you're going to, aside from hearing all that, you might be put in my position and you might have to send your friends somewhere and not be able to bring them home. And see the fallout from all of that after, and try to figure out how to continue going on and continue working if that's something for you or if it's not. So it can be a very heavy job. It's not all glitz and glamour. We don't get thank yous. We don't get hugs. And there's some agencies that we don't even get acknowledged. So, but you have to have passion for it, and you have to know that there are people that you truly are helping. And if that's where your heart is at, and that's where your mind's at, then you'll be successful. And just make sure that you find a good hobby outside of work. You cannot live, breathe, and eat work. You can't do it and be successful at your retirement. It's just not going to happen. So just find something that brings you joy outside of what you do. Don't lose your connections outside. Have family members, friends outside of law enforcement, because you need those people too. So
perfect.
I think that's it.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I want to say thank you for your service, and thank you very much for everything you've done to have the 6 of my brothers and sisters down there in uniform. I really appreciate it, Kristen.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure. I know we're going to stay in contact. That's the reality of things.
Absolutely.
I love just at least reaching out to you every now and again on the Instagram, on the DM, and I see your story and stuff like that. So it's always cool. It's really cool. And someday our paths will cross again. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone who's taken the time to listen to the podcast. My name is Larry Payton. I have your 6. Please have mine. And that'll be that. I'm just going to stop recording.
Okay.
Stop.